Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Judges, the 4th chapter. And in this chapter, the Lord pretty much delivers Israel from the hand of Jabin, right, the king of Canaan, by the hands of really a peculiar way of doing it, through Jael, right, the wife of I believe his name was Heber. But nonetheless, let's get into it. So this is the book of Judges, chapter 4, verse 1. And the children of Israel did evil, or again did evil in the sight of the Lord Yahweh, when Ehud was dead. Now remember, in the 3rd chapter, the Lord had raised up Ehud, right, to deliver Israel from the hands of the Moabites, okay, and him assassinating Eglon and leading the charge of Israel against the Moabites. So when he was dead, they went back to basically continuing to do their evil again. And the Lord Yahweh sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. So you had Jabin, and then you had Sisera, which was his captain of his army. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord Yahweh, for he had 900 chariots of iron. So his army was fierce, right? And 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, she judged Israel at that time. Now, something interesting here is concerning Deborah. There are people that try to, go to Judges 4 and they try to pull up the reference of her to, make a point or justify, say like women being in certain positions and so on and so forth. But it's important to understand that at this point in time, as it says, she was a prophetess. It didn't put her on the same level as, like a prophet of the Lord, right? And the Lord did have her in a position to judge or instruct Israel at this time, but that was a role, that he had had for her to play, right? But it doesn't override or turn or change anything about the dynamics in which the Lord himself has ordained when it comes to the role of or the position of a woman versus a man, right? So sometimes people try to use this and say, oh, see, women can be prophets too. They can go out there and do what prophets do and so on and so forth. But even when you look at Deborah, she wasn't doing what, say, the prophets of old were doing per se, right? The Lord didn't command her to go and teach and do all this, that, and the third, though he did put her in a position to play this role of judging Israel for a period of time. Okay, now I'm going to look into this word here, prophetess. And as it says here, prophetess, an ancient type endowed with a gift of song, Miriam. So technically Miriam was a prophetess in the sense that she was able to sing, right? And sometimes have prophetic lyrics, you could say, within those songs. Okay. A later type consulted for a word, Huldah. And then you have false prophets, and then you also have a wife of a prophet would also be considered a prophetess. Yeah, so it says here in the Strong's definition, a prophetess or generally inspired woman, by implication a poetess, by association a prophet's wife, prophetess. So that inspired here in this case was she was divinely inspired, right? And that's why she was able to tell Barak what it is that the Lord's message was concerning him and Jabin, and Jabin being delivered into the hand of Israel. So, continuing in verse 5. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam. And another interesting thing too, as well, is that, you will notice that if you read it, but as you go into the books that are of like the Old Testament, more closer to like the early periods, right? The time of the Torah or the patriarchs and so on and so forth. There were, instances that happened in there that may not have been conventional, so to speak, right? And they weren't necessarily incidents or events that happened to set a precedent of what would happen or what should take place after, but a good amount of them were circumstantial. And one example I'll give is in the law, right? The scriptures tell you that you're not supposed to marry two sisters, right? Because then they would be jealous one of another. But now you go and read the story of Jacob, for example, right? And you're like, well, the Lord orchestrated these events, and it just so happened that he ended up marrying two sisters, right? So now does that mean that, oh, well, because Jacob did it, now you can go and do it? That's not, no, right? But that's an example of an event that took place based on circumstance, but that's not supposed to be a precedent of something that you should do going forward, right? So you may look at the situation with Deborah, and at the time, that's how the Lord saw it fit, and that's why he put a woman in a position like that, because there are some women that the Lord does put the Spirit on, and they'll give good advice, or they'll have, to a degree, sound judgment, when it comes to certain matters. But Deborah's situation wasn't a precedent to justify the unruly behavior of women today, and claiming that, oh, well, we're on the same level, and the Lord is dealing with us on the same way. Because if that was the case, then a spiritual man, right, who the Lord was dealing with, like the Apostle Paul, then wouldn't have made the statement that a woman is not permitted to speak in the church, right? Anyway, so continuing in Judges chapter 4, verse 5. So as it says, and the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. So when they had certain matters happened, certain questions, or they needed an answer on certain things, they would come to her, and the Lord put the Spirit on her to where she would give the answer, like, okay, do it this way, or this person is at fault, or this is how it should be handled, and so on. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali, so Kadesh of Naphtali, and said unto him, hath not the Lord Yahweh God of Israel commanded, saying, go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and of the children of Zebulun? Now, when because we've seen this many times already, and you'll see this phrase some more times as well. When somebody speaks in this sense, and it sounds like they're asking a question, this was a part of the, say, speech pattern of the ancient world. But Deborah is not asking that, hasn't the Lord actually, said X, Y, and Z. What it translates to in modern English is, it's more like a telling, right? Like, the Lord said, the Lord has commanded you to go and do this, that, and the third. Verse 7. And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. So you go, and the Lord says, go and gather the 10,000 men of Zebulun and Naphtali, and you go up to Mount Tabor, and I'm going to bring Sisera onto you with his armies, and they're going to be delivered into your hand. So you're going to be able to take them over. And Barak said unto her, if thou wilt go with me, then I will go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. So he said, I'm only going to go if you come in with me. And I guess he he figured that with the spirit that the Lord had put on her, if she went with him, then if anything, things would go better in his favor than if he went by himself. Which he should have had more faith in that, but hey, it was all the doings of the Lord. And she said, I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor. So this this undertaking, right, you go into this battle, it's not going to be, the glory is not going to be going to you. For the Lord Yahweh shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. But she wasn't talking about herself either, right? She was saying that this battle you're going to have, ultimately the glory of it is not going to be for you, but for a woman. And Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went up with him. Now, the men at his feet doesn't mean they were actually at his feet, but what it means is that they were with him. Now Heber, the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and yes, Moses' father-in-law's name was Jethro, but another name for him was Hobab. And as it says here, he was a descendant of Moses' father-in-law, had severed himself from the Kenites, which pitched his tent onto the plain of Zanaim, which is by Kadesh. So, as we read before, I believe it was in the book of Judges, Joshua, or maybe in the beginning of Judges, but it might have been Joshua. Anyway, it mentioned that the Kenites went and pitched their tent in the wilderness of Judah. So he was one that separated and instead went and dwelt in Kadesh. And they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor. So he got word that Barak is basically gathered an army and he's up there. And Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him, from Harosheth of the Gentiles on to the river of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up, for this is the day in which the Lord Yahweh hath delivered Sisera into thine hand. Now, the up here meaning like get ready, right? Because this is the day that the Lord is going to deliver Sisera into your hand. Is not the Lord Yahweh gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, meaning the Lord has already taken the charge ahead. So that's why the army will be delivered into your hand. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men with him, or 10,000 men after him. And the Lord Yahweh discomfited Sisera and all his chariots, i.e. he weakened them, and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. So he was basically his army lost and he ran away, right? He ran away on foot. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host onto Harosheth of the Gentiles, and all the hosts of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left, so they slew all the army of Sisera. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, the one who had separated his tent up onto Kadesh. For there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. So they were on good terms. So that's why Sisera was able to seek refuge here in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. Meaning, you can stay here. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him drink, and covered him. Again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent. And it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? That thou shalt say, No. So basically, stand guard at the entrance, and if anybody comes to inquire, just say it's just you here. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tents. Now, once again, the tents of the ancient world, right? Tents of Bible time were not small, right? They were like dwelling places, so they were pretty huge, right? This is like one example, modern day example. This is also another example here, right? And you can see this is like almost like a small house, right? But it's just set up with tents, you know. And so you had different divisions in there. You had the area that was separated for where the women would be and the children, and you know, so if a guest came in, they wouldn't go into that back area where the women, you know, would be, and that's where the women would stay. That was like a private, a no man except for the husband was allowed there. Now, what I wanted to emphasize is you see these things right here, these like giant peg looking kind of things, right? Those are the nails, right? And they weren't small. They were huge. They weren't like a small, tiny little nails. They were huge because they had to hold up the strings that would keep the tent, this heavy ass tent up. So those are the kind of nails. That's the kind of nail that she got. It wasn't like a tiny little screw that we're dealing with over here. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Ain't too bad. Ain't too bad. Shit. Better than a Bronx apartment. But so she went and got her one of those. It says, and took an hammer in her head, in her hand, and went softly onto him. So at this point, he was asleep, right? She done gave him some of that milk. She covered him up. He's warm. You know, he's like, I bet nobody will find me here. He's tired, right? After that battle. So he's catching him some Z's. And she comes in there with a hammer and a nail. And she's ready to go to work. So she gets, as I said, she went softly onto him. So light-footed, so that he wouldn't hear or be startled or even wake up, and smote the nail into his temples. The temples meaning the sides of his head, right? So imagine if he's sleeping on one side. If you look up here, the temples of head, right there. They diagram it. Boom. Here's another part right here. So she got that nail, and you know, if he's asleep, right, even if she like lightly aimed it at the top, and even if it touched his head a little bit, he probably wouldn't wake up. So it wouldn't be until the point of like impact where, and you know, she's not at this point, you can see that she was pretty cunning. So she would know that the first hit would be very crucial, right? It's not something, you're not like a light tap because he would wake up. So the first hit was a nice heavy, you know, and then you keep on going immediately. Just continue to nail the head, the hammer the nail into his head. So even if he wakes up after the first hit, at this point, he's already done. You know, he's already done. So that's how, because you might be wondering, well, you know, he's a whole man of war. How is she, you know, how did he wake up? Or no. You wake up to a nail. You already disoriented. And now there's a nail halfway through your brain, you know, and then it just keeps on going. Yeah, he wasn't going to make it. So as it says, so she nailed it into his temples and fastened it into the ground, meaning like how I pulled up this before. Let me see, what was it? I think it was this one here. So you see how the nail, this is an example, it's fastened into the ground, meaning it's been nailed all the way down into the ground. So she nailed this guy's head all the way down. That must have been a long nail or a pin too. For he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said unto him, Come, and I will shew thee the man whom thou seekest. So she basically went out, she saw him, pull up, I got the man you're looking for is here. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered, and prevailed against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin king of Canaan. And this is why Deborah said that the glory wouldn't be for Barak, but a woman, because Jael was the woman that the Lord used by this means, similar to like what Judith did to I think it was Holofernes, if I'm not mistaken. I think that might have been his name, but maybe if I'm wrong, then we all know though it was one of the guys in the armies. But similar to that, right, where the Lord used the the deceptiveness of a woman to, lower the defenses of this man and then take him up out of there. And that brings us to the end of the book of Judges, the 4th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.